fun? Wanna have some fun? Wanna have some fun? Fun?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, this is the remix rewind now for Total Remix 13. Jesus Christ. Can't believe, as commissioner, I have survived for now 13 seasons. Mr. Assistant Commissioner, you've been here since the beginning as well. How are you feeling heading into yet another football season?
Feeling good, just dusting off the cobwebs, the dust, opening up the doors for yet another season. 13 is my lucky number, so maybe we'll do good.
Well, I thought this was a long off season. Football was one of the first things from my mind, and I was somewhat hesitant about restarting. I feel like the last couple of years, that creep of fatigue for the season has hit me earlier and earlier, and this was the first year that the calendar turned over to August, and I was thinking, "Holy shit, I haven't even thought about this." So um, back in it though, excited. We got everybody here. We're ready to celebrate, and what really put me over the edge was thinking about how our season concluded last year. If memory serves, we had a memorable championship game between Shelby and Mr. Trump, and it came down to the wire. I'm happy to sort of give a brief 2-minute recap of our season, but is there anything from last year that stands out? Is there anything that you want to try to duplicate? Is there anything you want to atone for? You made it to the semifinals of the playoffs, I believe, before
Mm-hmm.
getting rocked. Any sort of thoughts of either your team or the season as a whole?
Yeah, I think I did good enough last year, but I'm gonna do a little better on some picks and definitely not gonna be giving away my players this year. Scared to be
There's
off in the
certainly,
trades.
yeah, certainly the trading seemed to be a funnel. If I'm remembering correctly,
Yeah.
there was definitely some controversy about one team sucking up the oxygen in the room with the trades, and it almost paid off. He made it all the way to the end, and if it wasn't for Mr. Jared Goff reaching the 300 passing yard threshold, and the which could have been, I don't even remember, maybe the final game of the week in our championship round. It put Shelby over the edge by about 5 points over Trump, who needed Brock Purdy to continue probably his best game of the season. And if memory serves, on their last drive late in the fourth quarter, Kyle Shanahan yanks Purdy in a game they were going to lose, and he wasn't able to overcome the late deficit, and he chokes in the championship. So uh, we'll give a shout out to Mr. Shelby, the rookie. He comes in here and he takes all of our lunch money, and he beats the seemingly invincible trade magnate, Mr. Trump, in the final. That was quite a thrilling finish to the season.
Yeah, I don't remember any championship games ending like that. Probably heartbreaking fashion for Tony, but it's just how it goes, unfortunately, isn't it?
It had 2007 Patriots vibes. I mean, he was clearly the team to beat, and he got beat by the Giants. Even though, give Shelby his flowers, he was a force, and he made some pretty bold, pretty correct picks. He had a nice group of consistent running backs. He had some young wide receivers. He just had a nice, healthy team, and uh, and the gamesmanship. I mean, the stuff that I love to see when I was going over the keeper lists. I looked at Trump's team and I said, "Why the fuck does he have like 4 backup, like no-name quarterbacks on his roster?" And I remember
Mm.
that in the championship round, there was some injury to the presumed starter for Shelby in his super flex,
Oh,
and and Trump got first to the gate, and he just added and dropped all these players so that Shelby couldn't get a reliable super flex. And the guy that Shelby picked up, the quarterback for Cleveland, probably third or fourth stringer, wound up hurting him. I mean, he got less than 5 points. But it goes to show you, man, you got to fight dirty sometimes. You try to win, and Trump did everything he could. He just came up a little short.
Guerrilla warfare, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we tried to get both of those assholes on in December to talk about that match. I can certainly understand why Tony flaked. I would love to hear from our winner or our runner-up at some point in the season to talk about it, but we're happy to recap it here. I don't really have much to add to last season. Are there any other sort of highlights or things that you wanted to put here at the top of the docket before we turn the page and briefly discuss this season, new setup, new teams, new keepers, and what to expect going into our draft here in a few days?
No, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's see what the new blood's looking like.
Well, we have our keeper declarations made, and by my count, 8 of our 12 teams have declared a keeper, and 5 of those 8 are some of the top end quarterbacks, which I thought was pretty interesting, and frankly, that helped me make my keeper decision, and we can go through those. Of the 8, like I said, 5 are quarterbacks. Josh Allen, you are keeping for $46. Jaden Daniels is being kept for $39. Jalen Hurts is being kept for $49. Joe Burrow, my keeper, is being kept for $30, and Bo Nix is being kept for the minimum floor of $10 in draft capital. The other 3 players, the only running back that's being kept is Chase Brown for 10. And then we have 2 wide receivers that are being kept, Brian Thomas Jr. for 13 and T. Higgins for 27.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on that group or any of the keeper selections that players made, or the teams that opted to not keep any player? Do you have any thoughts about that? And I guess part 2 of that question, or part B, do you have any thoughts specifically about 5 top quarterback options being kept, and what do you think the ramifications for that during the draft are going to be?
Yeah. Well, I'll have to kind of look at the list and the guys that didn't keep any. They must not have had any good options. But we'll look at their list maybe. But yeah, very interesting. I think it's usually quarterbacks that are kept, for what I remember. Though, is this a new trend?
Mixed bag, I would say. I mean, there's almost always a quarterback or 2 that gets
Yeah.
injured and dropped, and shrewd managers will pick those people up and have them for bottom basement level value. And I that happened to me. Dak Prescott was injured, season-ending IR. I scooped him up at the very end. Thought about keeping him. I declined that privilege. I only had Joe Burrow last year for a really good value because he was injured 2 years ago, and I still have him at what I think hopefully is going to be a discount. That could lead to some of it. There have been years past where more running backs, wide receivers are kept. I think it's interesting that so many big named quarterbacks have been kept. That I found to be not exactly shocking, but there are guys that 3 out of the top, well, in my opinion, without giving away my cheat sheet, 4 of the top 5 quarterbacks available are being kept, and 5 of the top 8. So you're really going to create a premium for the guys that are still available, like Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield. Like those guys are. We'll see. Do you think this is going to be a supply shortage and a run on those guys, Or do you have any thoughts about it?
It definitely might squeeze the market on those top tier quarterbacks for sure. Guess we'll have to see how frisky the last few guys without QBs are feeling. We're in a super flex like ours though. You just they're in short supply. Good quarterbacks.
It really is hard to compete in a super flex when you don't have at least one just very steady and secure quarterback. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the guys that are usually the guys that compete at the highest level have a legitimate strong quarterback, and then they get a diamond in the rough that turns out to be very special, and they only paid a few dollars for them in the draft,
Mm-hmm.
and you're able to then use that person potentially as your keeper for the next year. So not only does it set you up for great success potentially in the current year, it could help jumpstart a wonderful roster for the following year. And
Mm-hmm.
we see that a lot. But yeah, I look at the people that finished at the very top of the list here. Shelby. I don't know what his mid-season what his quarterbacks looked like, but at the end here, I mean, he had Jared Goff and that was it. And Goff had a great season. Trump, I mean, his QB issues were much maligned up until the fact at the time he acquired Bo Nix, which really sent the commission full tilt. But he had Brock Purdy, and that was it. Shelby acquired Goff in a trade, so he took away QB value and got something back, and that obviously rode him to a championship. And conversely, Saquon, who finished third last year, he paid almost the highest price for a quarterback in last year's draft. He paid $41 for C.J. Stroud and only $3 for Geno Smith, and I don't think there was much daylight between the two of them. So you can imagine if Stroud had a sophomore season that mirrored his rookie season, that Saquon could have been knocking on the door of a championship. I mean, when we finished third, you finished fourth. You had Josh Allen. Obviously, that was helpful. Dooku had Lamar Jackson, and Vegeta, the last playoff team, had Patrick Mahomes, who was kind of a disappointment. But at least those are big names there that are producing. So it seems to suggest that if you have good quarterback play, either through your draft or trading for them, you're going to have success. And so I agree with you. It's a super flex. Quarterback should be a premium, and it's sometimes though you can still get away. I mean, if you have stacked wide receivers and running backs, you can get away with just mediocre quarterback play.
Yeah. And I may or may not be trolling with adding some little bids in on these QBs out there.
Well, it certainly behooves the people who have kept Allen, Daniels, Hurts, Burrow, and Nix to try to drive the price up as much as possible. I mean, we already know we have our Baltimore homer who, again, newsflash to the league, no other person besides Dooku has ever had Lamar Jackson on their team in this league since Lamar Jackson stepped onto an NFL field. So is this going to be the year that someone snatches Lamar out of Dooku's hands? I have no idea, but he is the one quarterback that is left that is top tier. Uh, I'm certainly going to feel foolish if some combination of Mahomes, Mayfield, Murray, Jackson go for less than $30, and I think uh, hopefully the odds of that are going to be pretty low. But the five teams, I mean, nearly half the league who already has a top end quarterback, you would think that the incentive should be to drive the market up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. That should be what we're trying to do. And did I hear 10 for Knicks? I hope I didn't hear that.
Oh, that's correct, sir, because if you'll recall, you drafted Mr. Nix for $1, and you kept him there until you traded him to somebody else Was it Vegeta who then
Mm.
turned around and gave Nix to Trump? So Bo Nix was on the move last year, and I have to imagine that you would have felt much better keeping Nix at 10 instead of Allen at 46.
Oh, for sure. That definitely would have been the keeper. Yeah.
Yep. Uh, so, I think that if we look through these lists, I don't know that there's anything in particular that stands out to me on Shelby's team. I think Brian Thomas Jr. He drafts him for $3. What an amazing value at the draft. Lad McConkey is also interesting at 15, but that's decent cost. Trump keeps Bo Nix, $10, great value. I think he also could have kept either Nakua or Collins at their value in the 30s. I think that's a value. Jackson Smith and Jigba for 12, I think is a really good value. I think that's probably it on his team, but he definitely had options. I mean, when he snatched some of these guys for in trades, he got ones that not only were effective for him last year, but also could have potentially been keeper options for him for this year. So that was very smart. Saquon, who finished third, did not keep anybody, and I really don't blame him. This lineup is, the folks he had here. Just there's no screaming value. I mean, the Devon Achane for 31. He's probably going to go for more than $31 in the draft, but Trey McBride is one of the premier tight ends. 25 is a steep. Like I don't know what the value is there. He's probably smart to just not keep anybody. You kept Josh Allen. I think if you were the only one to have kept the top end quarterback, I think 46 would have been a steep price. I mean, considering you paid 36 for him last year, but because these other folks are also keeping players, around this price, it was Saban CP who keeping Jalen Hurts for 49, I think, is a little foolish. We can get to him when we get down to his 10th place team when we go through this list. But
Yeah.
I think him kicking that off, keeping a surefire QB1 for that high of a price, just sort of started the domino effect of these other guys. Um, but once you sort of have the cover of someone keeping a quarterback who maybe is projected to perform slightly less than Allen, but he's keeping him for more, I think certainly makes it easier to swallow keeping Allen at 46. But I didn't really see any other value on your team that sort of stuck out to me. Maybe Xavier Worthy for 13, but there's a chance you'll be able to pick him up for that amount or less in the draft. So was that more or less your thinking? It was Allen or bust?
Yeah, I forgot. There was it was three guys, but Allen was the only one that made any sense, to be honest.
Makes sense. Dooku, I'm a little shocked. He could have. He had really good value to keep Brock Bowers for $12. That one, I don't know if he just wasn't paying attention or just didn't want to keep him. I have no clue. I'm not going to read his mind, but um, he will go for much more than 12 in this draft.
Yeah.
So we'll see what his strategy ends up being. Vegeta here picked up Chase Brown off the waiver pool for nothing, gets to keep him for 10. That is outstanding value for a guy who's projected to be probably a top 10 running back this year. Whenever you can keep a running back of that ilk for that low of a cost, I think you're doing something right. So he's definitely got his draft headed in the right direction, in my opinion. Sally Balls declined a keeper. I can't really argue with that. I don't see screaming value perhaps outside of George Kittle. I think Kittle's going to be a very highly sought after item on the tight end market. 17 might be a little too rich for his blood. Other than that, there really isn't much of an option for him. So I think that's probably a smart pick. Busty's ass was on the Christian McCaffrey experience last year, and he he bet big and lost there. He drafts Jaden Daniels last year for 29, and Jaden Daniels, amazing rookie season. He's going to keep him for 39. I think when that domino fell after Hurts, I think that sort of started the run on the top end QBs, and it certainly made my pick of Joe Burrow at 30 easier to manage, because I was frankly on the fence about doing that, but I don't see anybody else on that team for that would be considered a value, perhaps outside of Malik Neighbors. If he had said, "I want to keep Malik Neighbors for 26," I think that would have been decent value. Um, but he's in the boat with the rest of us who've kept quarterbacks. He needs the tight end or the quarterback market to go up in order to return that value, uh, and so we'll see on Tuesday night if it happens.
Mm-hmm.
I kept Burrow. I think, like I said, the only other serious option I thought about was Dak Prescott. Chris Olave, I scooped up for nothing at the very end of the season, hoping that Derek Carr or a different quarterback would come in for New Orleans, but now they've settled on Spencer Rattler as their quarterback, and Chris Olave is one small hit to the head away from having a scrambled brain for the rest of his life. So there just wasn't an option to keep him. Prescott was kind of interesting, but I think there's a decent chance that Joe Burrow is going to lead the league in passing stats again this year. So hopefully that's a value. Saban, like we said, he's keeping Hurts at 49. This one was frankly just a little head scratching. Like I think he's got more value elsewhere on this list. I think Bucky Irving, what he did down the stretch last year, he traded for this guy. He could have kept him for $10. He's projected to be a top 10 running back. Like that was his play. Um, I think Ken Walker at 26 is a good value. I think Roma Dunze at 10 is good value. Hell, I mean Joe Flacco airs it out everywhere. Like I don't know that I could stomach keeping 43-year-old Joe Flacco, but that's better value to me than Hurts at 49. So he makes his own unique moves every year, and you know he's the reason why we started an auction draft in the first place. So he's got a strategy. He's doing something. He wanted Hurts on his team, and he's keeping it for 49. So that was his call to make. Any thoughts on any of those teams, or on Saban in particular?
No, nah, not much. Yeah, I think people just were trying to keep quarterbacks more than anything. Like you said, no matter what the price was, they were trying to keep their best asset from last year.
Yeah, fair enough. Warrior declines to keep anybody. I thought it was interesting. I mean, I think Drake May for $10 would have been good value. I think Chuba Hubbard for 10 is a good value. I can understand why he didn't want to re-keep Kyler Murray. He had kind of a disappointing year. Rashi Rice for 21 potentially would have been a good value, but now we know he's going to be out the first 6 games of the season. Plus, they have their bye week is later in the year, so he's gone half the season. So 21 probably isn't the best value for him. Nick Chubb, but he's right now projected to be the starter for the Houston Texans, with Joe Mixon being out and questionable perhaps all season. So maybe there's some value there. Jameson Williams for 11, I think it could have been a smash grab. So he had some options here. I don't know if he just didn't like those pieces or what, has a different strategy, but he had some options, unlike say Saquon, who I can completely understand why he didn't pick anybody, or Sally Balls, but Warrior had some options that I felt like if other teams had, they would have utilized some of those options. And then Frank Lucas keeps T Higgins for 27. I think I don't love it. I've been on the T Higgins ride before, and it's not really worked out for me. He seems to miss 3 or 4 games every year and then leave 1 or 2 additional games in the first quarter with an injury. When he's on the field, he's amazing. and and I think he's rightly fringe top 12 wide receiver. But I think 27 is maybe a little steep for him, or at least it's not great value. I think Cortland Sutton for 13 is a potentially better value. I think Baker Mayfield for 11
Yeah.
is great. I mean, he's sort of in that tier, in my opinion, with Bo Nix, and Nix gets kept for 10. I think Baker for 11 is a really good deal.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I definitely would have done Baker instead on this one.
So it would have been interesting. I mean, we could have had two potential other teams keeping quarterbacks.
Yeah.
In Baker and Drake May, like we just discussed, and that really would have put a squeeze on the supply of higher end running back QBs, in my opinion. But to each their own. It's their team, and they've made their decisions for Christ. So those are our 8 keepers that are confirmed. Those have been locked into the system, and as a refresher, those dollar amounts will be subtracted from those teams' $200 starting auction budget for the teams that kept players, and for the 4 that didn't, they start with 200, and then we all go from there.
Yeah.
Any thoughts overall on the sort of keeper landscape, and is there any keeper that stands out to you either as a really great value or perhaps not so much, or have we talked this issue to death?
No, we may have beat it up, but I think Bo Nix at 10 is going to be a good steal, and I may have gotten ripped off for my 46 Josh Allen. We'll find out.
I never know in this league, man. I mean, there are years where some top end running backs go for $65, $70. Same thing
Yeah.
for wide receivers, and the quarterbacks are no different. I mean, Josh Allen has been the number 1 quarterback for fantasy, or like number 2 quarterback for fantasy, like 5 straight years. So
Yeah.
even if you potentially, and I don't think this is a certainty, had an overreach on him by a few dollars, unless he gets hurt, you're still guaranteed to have one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks. Like that at least is um, a great way to start a draft, just knowing that you don't have to worry about your QB1 and you can focus on other positions. So
Mm-hmm.
we're only going to know when we see how much Mahomes and Jackson and Baker Mayfield go for, quite
Yeah.
where all that shakes out. But you already know for a fact that you haven't spent you're guaranteed to have not spent the most money for a quarterback, because that's that crown is currently being held by Mr. Saban.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Hurts at 49. Yeah. Me and him both may have reached on those. That's probably maybe 2 of my worst ones. So we'll see. I think your Burrow at 30s. That's a pretty good deal. Yeah.
Well, only, like I said, only if some of these other players go for more than 30,
Yeah.
then I'll sort of feel good. But I already feel like I'm hemmed in a little bit, because I'm in the whole 30. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that sort of wraps up the keepers for this year. Reminder, everybody, whenever if you listen to this, it's Tuesday night is our draft, and it's 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. I just mechanically, procedurally, the draft order is randomized. I think whenever the draft room opens 30 minutes in advance, that's when the order is randomly assigned. And then I've changed the bidding timer to 10 seconds, I think. And I know that catches everybody off guard before, but it absolutely saves so much time in the back end when we're just waiting for this thing to be over in the final like 20%,
Yeah.
especially
Even,
if folks exit. Like doing it, like the only, if there was a 15-second option, I consider it, but I think it's like a minute, 30 seconds, or 10, something crazy like that. And
no.
there's no way I'm going to let 30 seconds slide by for every nomination.
Yeah. So it may feel rushed in the beginning, but it'll be worth it on the long ones in the back end. Yeah.
Sure. So then the only time that really can bite you in the ass is at the end. You nominate somebody at the beginning, Yahoo is automatically going to have you nominate somebody that's a premium player, so you're not going to have to worry that you've nominated somebody for the starting dollar amount and nobody else is going to bid on them and it's not a player you want. So it really only affects you at the end when maybe everyone's down to just a few dollars and whoever you nominate, there's a high chance that they're going to wind up on your team for a dollar. That's where you sort of need to be on your toes. But it saves a lot of time, and the bidding timer is still 20 seconds. So it's 10 seconds to nominate somebody. That person is nominated, and then it starts the 20-second timer for bidding. And if that goes inside the 10-second window, if anybody else bids a higher amount within that 10 seconds, it restarts back to 10 seconds. So that should be a problem. That's always the case, and we've kept this 10-second timer for nominations for a few years now, and I think it's worked out okay. Every so often, people nominate somebody they don't want, but everyone has the option. Once you get in that room, you can select your queue of players to nominate. You can load them up, so you really don't have much of an excuse to say, "Oh, I was marking costs and searching for players, and the time snuck up on me." I mean, you definitely have time to go in there and load players up in your queue to nominate.
Yeah, that's why it's great to come in early. And yes, if you're not doing the queue, you're really not doing the draft right, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's players that you can alter the queue in any way you want once you make it. You can illuminate people, you can move them up and down. It's a great tool to use, and it sort of keeps that off your plate when you're trying to manage whatever
Yeah.
else people manage. I'm not going to get in your heads about how you do drafts, but assuming you're looking at costs and tiers and different players and positional needs and how much money you have left, like there's a lot to manage in an auction draft, and um, that's one thing you shouldn't have to be worrying about, because there's also some gamesmanship about who you nominate, especially early on. I mean, one of the things I'm interested in is seeing the quarterbacks get nominated early potentially,
Yeah.
and what those prices are going to look like. Um, so
Yeah.
who you nominate, especially in the first third, is maybe just as important as how much these players go for.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go ahead and nominate that $5 defense right off the bat.
Or the kickers, the $15 kickers. Yeah, I mean, this year was the first year that when I started to make the keeper list, and I was bypassing everyone's kicker, I'm like, wait a minute. There may be people here that think $10 for a kicker is a good value.
Yeah, I gotta give them the option, right?
Yep. No one jumped up and down though, so I assume I did the right thing.
So that's Tuesday at 7:30 Central Time, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
3:30 Hawaiian,
Right. Yeah,
I think.
absolutely.
And it's Tuesday, September 2nd, day after Labor Day.
Okay.
Any before we get out of here, any thoughts about this season's draft? Players that seem interesting, players that are going to be, maybe controversial picks, players that the fantasy community seems to be on opposite ends of the spectrum on, or are you curious to see how much certain players are going to go for, or alternatively, without selling your secret sauce to the public, what do you want to give any sort of insights into what you're looking at this year? Are you thinking of changing things up at all? I mean, you had a successful season last year, but anything you want to try to replicate or stay away from?
Well, I think I somehow ended up with CD Lamb 2 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken, and he was really the one good wide receiver that I didn't want last year. But we'll see. I think this is a bit of a odd year for the draft, fantasy football wise, because so many unknowns from like last year, like McCarthy being a rookie last year that you didn't even get to see the first round pick, like that you didn't get to watch it all on the field. Plus a lot of movement around like wide receivers and stuff during the off season. So I think it's going to be a bit tricky this year to start off.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the CeeDee Lamb thing. What were your thoughts? I pulled up the draft order from last year, which anybody can access and their own draft results. If you go to last year's league page for Total Remix 12, CeeDee Lamb was the 5th player off board, and he was only the 2nd wide receiver, and you got him for $51. Did you feel pressured somehow? Like, I mean, I don't. How did you? You said he was the top end guy that you didn't want. Was it just a case of I'm going to try to bid this guy up, and I wound up the one player without a chair, or you thought it was a value in the moment that you couldn't pass up on?
Yeah, I think it was either one of two things. I believe is me getting caught trying to troll, and maybe some of the other like top tier wide receivers had been kept. Maybe like there was some reason I ended up having to do that. He may have been the last tier 1 wide receiver on the board last year. I could be wrong.
Well, I mean, I'm without recalling tiers and what the status quo thinking on the players from a whole, last year was.
Yeah.
Just looking at the draft results, the only other wide receiver that went off first was Saban. I remember this, nominated Nico Collins first, and Nico was coming off an injury. And usually the first player nominated, unless it's like the number 1 overall player, like there's some hesitation about being the first person to go in and maybe reach on a player.
Oh
So
yeah.
played a little game there. He got Nico Collins for a value at 21. Of course, he then turns around and sends that value to Trump in a trade. um, we won't rehash that. But the next wide receiver that was nominated and bid on was CeeDee Lamb. So I mean, unless you had Nico and Lamb in the same tier last year, I think what you said about maybe trolling is sort of maybe what got you in trouble, because I don't see any of the other big name guys off the board till later. Like
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill went for 63, Amon-Ra, Jamar Chase both went in the early to mid 50s. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so maybe it was a case. It's a nice lesson for folks that if you're gonna try to drive the price up on somebody, do it with somebody that you wouldn't mind having on your team.
Yeah. In case you get stuck with the baggage, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's forget you had to float the bill.
So is that to say that CeeDee Lamb is completely off your draft board for this year? You don't want to make it a three-peat?
Yeah, that might be correct. But now that I think about it, it may have been Justin Jefferson I was trying to avoid last year. I could be wrong about that.
Well, he went for 55. He was one of the next wide receivers off.
Okay, yeah,
Usually in this league, it's some of the top end guys usually go. It's pretty pro forma. I mean, like I said, the Nico Collins was a curveball. Justin Tucker went for 4. Travis Kelce was nominated for 20. There were a couple of guys in here that weren't the top echelon running backs and wide receivers, and yet for the
yeah.
most part, that's exactly how the order fell. So yeah, some of that makes sense.
And yeah, I'm not sure how I'm big on the rookies this year or not. Some years I am. I'm just not 100% sure if I am this year. I'll have to look at the draft board some.
Well, if last year's results are any indication, Shelby showed that you can rock some rookies to a championship. I mean, he drafted
Yeah.
Lad McConkey for 5. I think he drafted Brian Thomas Jr. for 3. He had Jonathan Brooks on his team. He drafted for 3. He didn't really get to use him, um, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad, and they were
Yeah.
in his starting lineup uh, for his championship run last year. So he was able to pay top dollar for running backs and then find youthful wide receivers that flourished in the second half of the season. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. They're unproven commodities, just like you were saying with JJ McCarthy. Tore his
Yeah.
meniscus, missed all of last year. You have no idea what he's going to look like.
Yeah. But he's being touted like pretty good, I know, for this year. So it's like, let's see.
Yeah, and then you got someone like Michael Penix Jr., who actually started 3 games at the end of last year and looked great. And he is, according to consensus, considered considerably lower on rankings than McCarthy,
Yeah.
who we haven't seen take a snap at all, in an NFL game. So
Mm-hmm.
that's an interesting point. And if you spend on some of these rookies and they don't pan out, I mean, I remember the year famously 4 or 5 years ago where I was the one floating the bill on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, paid $50 for him, and he was pretty much a flop. Uh, we've got some rookie running backs in here that are supposed to be pretty top tier. I mean, they were drafted to be as such. Ashton Genty, who, I mean, he fucking set the world on fire in college football last year. Omarion Hampton, R.J. Harvey. These are some big tier. Travion Henderson. I mean, there's 3 or 4 wide running backs that are supposed to be the real deal, and yet you really don't know because you haven't
Yeah.
seen them do it.
Yeah, I tell you, Boise State wishes they had that dude back, though. Yes, sir.
They're not much when they can't just hand it off to him, right?
Yeah, no, it was very bad the other night. Yeah.
Well, any other thoughts about the draft or any
Uh,
sort of insight you would share with the listening public about your process?
yeah, no, I just want to see if you, if you wanted to make any comments on the draft.
I went all in on a couple of players early, spent over half my budget on Amon-Ra St. Brown and Brees Hall, a combined 108, I believe.
Oh, Brees Hall, Jesus, yeah,
Well, one was good. Amon-Ra was steady. I mean, he wasn't the world beater like uh, Jamar Chase,
yeah,
but he gave you a steady 15 to 20 points every single week. But Brees Hall, I mean, the Jets' offense was just terrible,
yeah,
and it really got me to thinking about forecasting an entire season with a franchise.
mm,
What's their quarterback situation? What's their offensive line situation? What does Vegas have to say about win totals, projected win totals? Because
yeah,
if you got a team that you know is stable, like just take the Buffalo Bills, there's really not a scenario outside of Josh Allen suffering a season-ending injury in which you don't think they're going to win their division or at least be right there in the mix for it and in playoff contention.
mm-hmm.
Like a true Super Bowl contender. That means they're not going to be taking their foot off the gas. So outside of injury, the team's not going to implode, which tells you that Allen's going to be safe the whole season. James Cook is going to be safe the whole season. Again, outside of injury,
Yeah,
and their premier pass catchers probably going to be okay throughout the season because they're going to be a good team. But you take a team like the Jets, which are just a perennial shithouse, like they've got a first time head coach who is defensive minded. They've got a questionable offensive line. They've got a quarterback on his third team now who is a run first guy who does not have a track record of producing winning football games. And yet you got some fantasy pieces around him. So I mean, Fields is a good fantasy quarterback. Brees Hall, when given opportunity, is a good running back. He's
mm-hmm.
got some younger guys behind him, and you got Garrett Wilson as a wide receiver. There is a decent chance that after 5 weeks, Fields is gone. I have no idea who their backup is, and they're just tanking for a number 1 pick.
Yeah,
If that's the case, they're gonna get rid of Brees Hall, or they're gonna showcase their other players. Garrett Wilson's value is completely gone,
mm-hmm.
probably, and it has nothing to do with whether or not you spend a lot of auction money on players who are good for fantasy. They could just be in shit situations. So one of the things I learned was maybe I'm going to try to target people on offenses or teams that I think are going to be producing on the offensive side of the ball, so scoring more than 20 points a game on average, and going to be winning games.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's a place to look. I would look at NFL. I would look at Vegas consensus win totals for teams, points scored for offenses, and individual player props. Look and see what Vegas tells you for season long passing yardage, passing touchdowns, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns to running backs, wide receiver stats, and just see where there's going to be some arbitrage opportunities there. Who's a player that the fantasy community is down on, but Vegas is up on? Like
Mm-hmm.
those are the other players that you can sort of look at and say, that's where my value is going to be.
Yeah.
Because I promise you, more times than not, Vegas is going to be right.
And I wouldn't read too much in that preseason. I've gotten in trouble doing that a few times.
Very true. Yeah, that's also something else. That there's highlights you've seen, or certain teams that look flashy in the preseason. I remember the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, 2 years ago. They came out and looked unbeatable, and then they get to week 1, and it's just a completely different story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So those are some of our thoughts. It is all going to come down to luck. There's players that everyone
Mm-hmm.
listening to this has sort of gravitated towards. Got a short list of folks that you really want to target, probably, and they're either going to be good or they're not. They're either
Yeah.
going to stay healthy or they're not. And that's what makes this so exciting, because if you could just project this and know that the Chiefs and the Eagles were going to meet again in the Super Bowl and have, win 13 or 14 games, it wouldn't be that exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There wouldn't be that much for chance or parity. So I
Yeah.
think that just hope that this year is a year the ball bounces in your favor.
Hey, you gotta hope you get that Jaden Daniels this year, right?
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's some options out there. There's value.
Yeah.
You just have to know where to look, and don't be afraid to take that stab. When it's CeeDee Lamb that's nominated, make sure you're the one that places the last bid.
He'll get stuck holding the check. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Well, any final remarks or thoughts you had?
Nah, that's a pretty good intro. Yeah, I'm very excited about the draft though.
I am as well. We got a few more days, so crunch that prep, and we will
Right.
see everybody on Tuesday for the assistant commish. This is the commissioner for Total Remix 13 pre-draft edition signing off. Hope you enjoy the ride. We will see you Tuesday.
Get your ass to Mars. Get your ass to Mars. Get your ass to Mars.